And which truth is that?
Knowledge is power.
For if knowledge is power, then a god am. Was that over the top?
The need for knowledge management in contact centers is much greater than the need for knowledge management anywhere else.
We talk about fear, we talk about misconception, we talk about, what the future looks like.
People outside of customer service think that life is just a bunch of FAQs.
Do you think there is an empathy gap at the executive level?
We don't have the opportunity for that in Australia.
Isn't that basically reducing my ability to memorize?
Hallucinations are basically, I always describe it as a bit like your husband.
Think the BPO should be scared?
That is a dangerous question.
Welcome to today's episode of CEX Talks. We are diving into the fast evolving world of customer experience, how it's changing, what agents need to succeed, and what the future holds. And I have with me, our esteemed guest, Brad Shaw, CEO of LivePro. You can see that on his t-shirt. Leader in knowledge management for contact centers. Brad's career spans across advising and coaching CEOs and senior management across different verticals, across different geographies, basically guiding them on how to grow the business, what the customers want. And from there, he transitioned into being an entrepreneur. We'll explore everything, from empowering frontline agents to the unique challenges of expanding an Australian tech business globally. Welcome, Brad.
Thank you. And thank you for the introduction.
So, Brad, any interesting aspects about your career so far you would like to share with our listeners, specifically the journey, from, being into coaching and then, coming into knowledge management?
You don't know me well enough to know that is a dangerous question. They could mean that you have to edit hours out of the whole podcast. I was a business coach for 12 years, loved it, helped a lot of people grow. Somebody offered me the opportunity to take over LivePro, and my answer to them was, sorry, you really got to be passionate about the product to be running a company. It only had 8 customers. It had a couple of staff, but it had a great potential. And so I helped them look for a future owner or CEO. And during that journey, about 6 months into it, I woke up at 2 a.m. with a business plan for LivePro in my head. I couldn't get back to sleep. So I did the business plan and attached it to an email saying, I think I've found the person who can get passionate about LivePro. And from there, within 6 or 8 months, I acquired a majority share of the business because it delivers something that the market actually needs. And it already had some very loyal customers. Not many customers, but very loyal customers. And I could see that there was a lot of value in it. And I'm sure we're going to talk about the actual mystery of the difference between knowledge management and document management. And it's something that CEOs and business owners, particularly in the world of AI, need to come to grips with.
It brings me to my first question. One said, agents need answers, not information, right? Let's understand that distinction.
Well, I'm sure everybody's had that experience where you've asked your assistant like Siri or Alexa a question and it comes back with, I found this on the internet. You're actually looking for an answer. You're not looking for more research. And so if somebody rings an agent in a contact center, they want an answer. They don't want the agent to say, just hold the line, and you put them on hold and you're reading through a 32-page PDF for the answer to a question. Same thing if you go onto a website, somebody, and it delivers you this big product PDF, and then you have to do your own research to find it. That's not a great experience. And there's technology like LivePro around to take it away from that. But often people outside of customer service think that life is just a bunch of FAQs, but it's not. It's way deeper than that. Can I get a refund on my flight? Can sometimes mean looking through a spreadsheet that is WW wide and 136 deep, and an agent having to work out exactly whether you can get a refund or not. That's an answer to a question, and it's not a simple.
But let me ask you this, right? So knowledge management, you and I have been in the industry, if you date ourselves, so a lot of years, correct? It's always been there. I think ever since I got into the industry on the IT side, that was a crisis always. It still seems to be a crisis. So what are we not doing right?
I think, first of all, that the need for knowledge management in contact centers is much greater than the need for knowledge management anywhere else. And the reason for that is anybody that works in a contact center understands the need for speed and confidence in your answer. In a contact center, you are measured by every second that you are on a call. And you are measured by the satisfaction of a client. If you're able to give an answer to a customer in conversational speed, confidently, without any sort of delay, the customer is feeling like, oh, I've spoken to an expert here. I can believe what that person said. Thank you, I'm satisfied, goodbye. If you're talking to somebody who has to be put on hold and then you already nobody wakes up in the morning thinking, oh, good, I get to ring 4 contact centers today. You already didn't want to call, and now you've been put on hold for 45 minutes waiting for an agent. And then when the agent gets you, they don't know the answer. There's just no logic. And the thing is, if you're in the legal department or the HR department, nobody is measuring how long it takes you to find what you need. But in a contact center, you are. Even in IT, if you ring IT support, they're quite happy to give you a ticket and get back to you. You can't do that in a traditional contact center. So you need a tool to be able to simplify the complex so you can engage with the customer rather than concentrating on, can I find the right answer for this?
What about the agent? What about the agent experience?
Yeah. So imagine being an agent joining an insurance company or a bank and to ensure that you understand the products, the processes and procedures, they sit you in a classroom and kill you with PowerPoint for about 6 weeks so that you have to memorize everything about a product and everything about a service. And then it's 8:59 in the morning, you haven't answered one call in your whole career, you don't know what your first call is going to be about. Are you going to be able to remember even a third of what they've tried to cram into your head? And so you're nervous. You're not going to be focused on engaging with the customer. The customer is ringing because the issue that they've got is emotionally charged. If it wasn't urgent, if it wasn't important, they would have found another way of getting an answer. And so you've got a potentially difficult call with a customer, with a person who has to try and memorize information or then look around and try and find it. And imagine what it's like now when you've got work from anywhere scenarios. You don't have a buddy to turn to anymore. So staff engagement has been significantly improved if you give them the tools to actually help them do the job. And every survey that's done.
And I totally agree with that. And I've seen that in my experience. If you can reduce the training time and boost agent confidence, it directly reflects in your CX scores.
Yes.
Do you think there is an empathy gap at the executive level? Where at the executive level, they're not really that much in tune with what an agent faces day.
It's absolutely true. Unless you've spent time in an agent, in a contact center, you don't have the empathy level. But I don't blame anybody for that. I don't see too many executives having the empathy for an electrician or the empathy for a person that is driving a truck. They just are not experiencing it. The challenge for executives is to be able to cut through the noise and identify the important. And you need advocates for it. And unfortunately, in a contact center, you're fighting for a lot of things. You're fighting. I was talking to a potential client recently who chose a product that was attached to their CRM. They got a knowledge management system that was attached to their CRM. And she said, look, I know it's not anything like LivePro. It'll never be like LivePro, but it's the best I could get. And I said, if your executive had have said, what, you need a telephony system? No. You can use mobile phones. Would you have accepted that? The answer is no. If your executive said, you need a workforce management system? No. Just get people to come in all the time. you wouldn't have accepted it. But the only purpose for everybody coming to that contact center is to answer the customer's question. But for some reason, people will accept that they can get a less than adequate knowledge management system, which creates high AHT, bad staff engagement, bad customer satisfaction, and deplorable governance. If you don't
But see,
manage,
given your experience, as a coach, to more than 300 plus execs, and now working closely with the CX space and the contact center space, the biggest challenge which always exists is it's a cost center, right? And if it's a cost center, then everything becomes about ROI. Okay. If you're gonna, hey, if I deploy this technology, can it remove heads and reduce cost?
yeah.
Okay. In your experience, how do you address that?
First of all, it's easy because you can do an ROI very simply. But how do you address the broader issue? And that comes down to when you're an executive, when you're running a business, it's so much easier to deal with black and white ROI. It's so much more difficult to work in the grey. Everybody will admit that organizations that have high customer loyalty are going to be more successful than organizations that are not. But there's no one answer to high customer loyalty. Knowledge management is just a part of that. But if you get ROI, it's a black and white, simple answer. And I think cultures have evolved to different points in that. In the US, don't walk into an organization without your ROI. Whereas in other parts of the world, they grew past that 5 or 6 years ago and said, that's a given. We know that. You're going to do it.
That's a very interesting point. That's a very interesting point on how the buyer behavior is different. Now, is that a function of because the CX or the customer experience expectations in different markets, is that different? How do you see that?
Yeah, I think certainly in the APAC region, about 5 or 6 years ago, it migrated from ROI to a more balanced scorecard. But, I've always been suspicious of whether that was just window dressing. They didn't want to just admit that they're crudely just looking for cutting costs. But I know that even in the BPO world in APAC, there's a lot of focus on a balanced scorecard rather than how much can you reduce the cost of my contact center. And I think, as AI and self-service penetrates more deeply, the numbers of calls are going to be reduced significantly, but the complexities of the calls are going to be increased significantly because you're only going to call when you can't serve yourself and when AI can't serve you. And so the levels of empathy and the levels of expertise in contact centers will have to lift, and therefore, I believe, salaries.
But now, is that the expectation of that empathy quotient? Right? Is it different in different regions? Have you seen that? Something which is acceptable, say, for a customer in APAC might not be acceptable for a customer in the MEA region. And that would pose a unique challenge to you, when you are, positioning your product. How do you overcome that? How do you measure that and then say your product, LivePro, KM, can address that? Does that change anything at the product level?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I actually think customers globally want the same thing, but their expectations are different. If the market doesn't compete on customer satisfaction and they're not used to high levels of customer satisfaction, they're ambivalent about it. They're just expecting bad customer service. Whereas if the market is more intense and they've gone past it's only about cost, then that's an area that customers just get accustomed to getting better service. And I'm not sure that's to do with particular geographies. I think it's got to do with particular markets within each geography. There are some that are way more competitive, so they focus on more than just cost, and others where the rest of the market's not competing on anything else but cost, so they don't focus that much on on the customer service side. Eventually, things will bubble along, and somebody's going to differentiate from that perspective.
But when you roll out, LivePro across various markets, what's one thing that surprises you the most? You're like, same issue everywhere. What surprises you the most?
Yeah. Apart from the differences between ROI and the balanced scorecard, the thing that really is interesting is different cultures consume their knowledge differently. So we have a broad range of cultures within APAC, and we'll have organizations that have operations in Australia, but also operations in the Philippines, in India, in other Asian and Southeast Asian countries. And the consumption of knowledge is different. And we've had clients that have structured their knowledge in a certain way for Australia, and the team in Southeast Asia totally restructures it for their own purposes. And then I've actually seen instances where the Australian operation that was where the headquarters were went over and changed it to make it easier for the Southeast Asian countries to use. And within 6 months, they changed it back because it wasn't easier for them to use, because that's not culturally how they do it. And so in some cultures, you learn a lot more by rote and by steps and processes. And those cultures actually need their knowledge structured to suit them, not to suit the author, basically. And a good system allows that to happen.
And, with this whole AI wave, right?
Yep.
And then, you can talk about AI, it changes every day. It's AI, agent AI, whatever. Now, does that help in leveling the play field, number one? So that's my first question. And then how do you see that? Like, I know you guys have launched Luna, your AI voice agent. How is that different? What is your approach towards overall AI, and how will the agent or the human and the AI will work together?
Yeah. First of all, ask ChatGPT or Claude whether it can operate without a knowledge management system, and it will tell you it can't. And the logic, when you just give it a little bit of thought, is obvious. Everybody has learned the terminology of hallucinations with large language models. And hallucinations are basically, I always describe it as a bit like your husband. Large language models will answer the question like they are the absolute expert, even if they've got no idea. And they don't care whether it's right or not. They'll just answer it like they're confident, because that's what it was built for. It was built to work out what is the next logical word to use. So organizations are getting it to do a lot more complex things, but the only way an organization should feel confident in doing that is to say, I have absolute control on what it's going to refer to when it's delivering an answer. It's not going to crowdsource from the internet and from everything it's learned answers to my products, because only I can answer that. And so you need a knowledge management system that recognizes that you are in total control. And there's more to it than just saying, okay, it's only accessing my knowledge base. Because in your knowledge base, there is knowledge that only staff can see. There's knowledge that only partners can see. And there's knowledge that customers can see, and then the general market can see. So you need to actually have that control over what each audience can view through your large language model. So there's a lot more complexity in making sure that you can get the power of it. And then the smart organizations have the guardrails and the prompts to make sure that there's no hallucinations and that it will own up to not knowing an answer.
Okay. So then what is the biggest misconception you think is going around about, which you've heard, about AI and customer service? And then how do you address, because the other question is, the related question is, because of many misconceptions, there's also a big fear factor, which is out there in the global workforce as to, hey, what does it really mean? So any perspectives on that?
Yeah, look, first of all, there's a lot of fear about AI, mainly because it's new, it's changing quickly. And let's face it, if you don't live in the tech world, there may be some complexities that can scare you. But if you're living with it and you're watching how it grows and how you can control it, there's no need to be scared about it. There's some actual exciting things that you can do. As I said earlier, nobody rings a contact center or nobody gets up in the morning early and thinks, oh, I can ring a contact center. And you know what? It's got nothing to do with the people in the contact center. It's got to do with the management who make you wait 45 minutes to talk to that lovely person in the contact center. If you can just get an answer really quickly and get it through, and you get it through AI, is going to complain about that. And the agent does get sick of, hey, I need to change my password, or can you tell me the address of this? Those types of things should already be answered through technology, but it's going to grow, and it's going to expand into medium complexity things. But and to be able to do that, you have to have, if you want to respect your brand, absolute control on how it answers the questions. And as I said, the only way you can do that is if you have control of the knowledge and what each audience can have access to.
This is fundamentally changing the workplaces.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And we talk about fear, we talk about misconception, we talk about, what the future looks like. What do you think today the CEO should be doing, okay, to prepare for that hybrid workforce?
Yeah.
And are you seeing that being happen? Any examples as best practices which come across?
No, and I understand why. There's a gap between realization and action. And the changes and the dynamics that are being created by large language models. And let's be really clear, AI is way bigger than large language models, but large language models are the things that have created a lot of the disruption in the last couple of years. The changes are so great that and the people that are in executive positions are generally not young and generally not adapters to technology. There's a little bit for them to really catch up on. So they need to get an understanding that it's important for them to understand the large language model ecosystem and where it's possibly going to go and what it currently can do. Because it is going to fundamentally change things. I don't believe that anybody should be scared. I mean, the things it's going to do, particularly in the knowledge world, is going to mean that you're never going to forget anything.
But do you think the BPO should be scared? Does it raise a question on the BPO's existence?
If BPOs are only there to answer the simple self-service type questions, yeah. But I don't think they should be scared. I think the business world evolves, and BPOs, just like every other business, need to evolve their offering. But I believe humans will always have problems that need to be helped. They'll always have challenges they need somebody to help solve. And within the next 5 to 10 years, I don't see every single one of those being solved by AI. The BPOs need to identify exactly how their pricing model and their delivery model works. But I just think that rather than it being 1,000 heads, it might be 300, but way more complex.
And then are you seeing the buying models change and evolve? Because just a while back you referred to how the generation is changing. While there might be some changes in the thinking which has not happened at a senior exec level in some organizations. Do you think that is the baggage which is being brought forward and hence also limiting?
Yeah, look, we people who spend our lives in customer experience understand the value of great customer experience. If you haven't spent your life in there, then you can suffer from thinking that it's just a cost center. The smart ones don't think it's a cost center, but they're just not getting the right advice from the right people on how to optimize the value from it. And I think that could be where, I used to work in a recruitment company. I understand that BPOs are not always looked at for guidance and respectful strategy advice. But BPOs understand customer satisfaction. They understand how to get things in a way that creates a good experience for a client. The BPOs have to start I should not be telling any BPO what to do with their strategy. But one of the strategies is that if they can get organizations to understand that you can turn it into a profit center or a beneficial part of the business, then organizations will be investing a little more. I've had many instances where organizations have put in LivePro and within a year and a half, they actually add another resource to the managing of it. And I said to one of the COO, why did you do that? He said, Brad, I got such good results from just having one person working on it. I figured let's have to look to see what I can do too. And he was getting better results. And I think, you know, it'll be selected clients, just like it's select clients now dealing with BPOs. It's just that the model will adjust, just like contact center models will adjust.
Yeah. So let's pivot a little bit, right? Now let's talk about Australia. Okay, that Australia has produced some great SaaS heavyweights, right? Atlassian, Canva, and now LivePro is making waves. What's unique about building a tech company in Australia?
I'm not sure it is. I'm not sure that there's a community of tech entrepreneurs in Australia feeding from each other in a way that I perceive happens within, say, the small microcosm of New York or within California. Yes, we've had some great successful SaaS organizations, but I think they've done that the hard way. I am now networking better in the States and in the technology world, and I see how a startup can actually get 10 or 15 customers straight away because everybody is actually working with each other, and everybody in the startup world knows other people, whereas we don't have the opportunity for that in Australia. So I think it might take longer, but it certainly does push you to develop a product that can really be mature in the market, because you don't go entering into other markets until you're confident you're going well in the existing one. So you've already refined your product and you've refined your marketing. But then, as you know, every market is different. Don't believe just because we use the same language that it's the same. We operate in the same way.
But is Australia a good test bed for at least the APAC market to try out?
Yeah, it is. But let's not start assuming that we've decided to artificially call a region APAC, so therefore it's one homogenous little group. It's not. We all operate in different ways, and we need to understand that. Australians and New Zealanders are very similar, but we have a very different approach. Similarly, in Singapore, there's a lot of similarities and there's a lot of expats there, but it's a different approach. So you have to be empathetic to every customer and every market you're in. And sometimes that's not easy because you make too many assumptions. You make too many assumptions that, oh, they're like us, instead of taking a little time to understand how they're different. And not badly different, just different. And every culture is a little different.
Then to scale a company, like yours, coming out of Australia, does it mean a lot, that your cost to ramp up, to grow is much higher because, you have to tap into various countries, you have to lead there, you have to, invest maybe a whole lot on the product customization side.
Yeah.
How's that journey has been for you, and from here, how do you see that going?
See, I think one of the advantages of working in Australia is you just naturally assume you're going to be international. You know that if you're going to be successful, it's not going to just be in Australia. So you know you're going to go international. I'm not sure that's the case in the US. I'm not sure that if you start a business, quite frankly, I don't think you need to. You can be a very, very large company and not get out of the
just because of the market. Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So you learn a lot of differences and you expect a lot of differences. And I think if you've been successful with one homogenous market, then you may not be ready to evaluate the differences in the other markets. Whereas we just naturally know we have to. And the challenge then in any company, doesn't matter whether it's software or anything, is you have a personality, a DNA, a culture in your organization. How can you make sure that that emigrates to every country that you're going to operate in? That's one of the biggest challenges, because it has an impact on the delivery of your product. It doesn't matter how technological it is, there's still people behind it and they will have an impact. And your challenge as an international or global company is, how do I actually keep that culture the same, but respect the cultures of the new countries that I'm working in? It's a juggling.
It's basically, if I can put, like sticking to your own brand identity,
Correct. Yeah.
while adapting to the different markets. But your core values and your core brand identity, should stay the same because that's what you stand for, and then that's what great companies are built upon. If you can maintain that.
Yes, and it's very important. And when I was coaching, when I was a business coach, it was just as important in a logistics company as it was in a software company. And LivePro mission is to have the easiest system to use, the easiest system to manage, and be the easiest people to work with. That last one is a part of our DNA. But how do you make sure that that is transposed into another country with a different culture and what easy to work with actually means? And so that's the key. And every organization is going to have that little component of their culture and their personality that if they allow it to change, then you're not delivering the same product.
So, Brad, how do you see yourself in the company, and in the next, I won't go 5 years, because the market is changing so much. Let's say 12 to 18 months, what do you see as the key levers of growth, the markets, just the overall dynamics, what you're facing?
The exciting thing to be in tech at the moment is that somebody came out with a tool like a large language model that can actually transform most things that you do. And it is so exciting to be exploring and introducing tools that actually incorporate that. The second exciting thing is, quite luckily, I bought into a knowledge management company that all of a sudden organizations are realizing, we need to manage our knowledge management if we're going to actually be able to take advantage of the large language model. So there's a realization that that's required, but there's a perception that it's a big job, and AI has reduced the workload to get it, to make that the big job. The exciting thing is that AI used with a good knowledge management system and your CRM is going to deliver you a personal assistant that you would never have imagined. Imagine you read a blog today and the information was brilliant. I'm telling you, in a month's time, you won't remember 80% of what's in that blog.
Mm-hmm.
If you bring that into your personal knowledge management, you're never going to forget one component of that blog. And so when your personal knowledge management is preparing for a speech, preparing for a presentation, preparing for a board paper, it can be referring to every single knowledge article you have believed is worthy of keeping. But at the same time, it's actually got all of the information that you've prepared within your own world, and you've determined who's allowed to access that information. And so it's going to be doing a lot of the work for you. It's not going to do your thinking. So if you're only the subject, if you're the sum total of all of your knowledge, then get scared. But you're not the sum total of your knowledge. You
just hit on something quite controversial, and we can have a full podcast on that.
Yeah.
Because what you just referred to is a personal assistant, which will remember everything. Isn't that basically reducing my ability to memorize, which it has? Earlier, again, dating ourselves, there was a time when you could remember 50 phone numbers.
Yep.
Okay, today you don't, because you've outsourced it. Okay? You've outsourced it to your phone. And now, if I'm outsourcing my knowledge keeping, to an LLM, I'm basically offloading everything.
The answer to your question is, that's my perception of what's going to happen. But look, you may or may not believe that I've had a number of birthdays. And when I started in my career, I was using a calculator to add up some numbers. And my boss said, do that in your head. And I said, why would I do it in my head when I've got a machine that can do it for me? People are not memorizing a lot of things now. People don't wonder anymore. They Google. So you don't wonder something. In future, you won't be having problems remembering something if you've got a good knowledge management system that's got a good governance. Remember also, knowledge has a use by date. So the governance of your knowledge management system needs to prompt you to say, hey, you brought this into your mind 12 months ago. Is it still current? So you still need to do that. So yeah, you're right. You are going to have the best memory in the world, but not have any memory at all. And there's a lot of stuff being written now about, the death of SEO, the fact that, you're not going to be a search engine optimization because people are going to use large language models, ask questions to get answers. And so there's going to be a change in that. It's an evolution that almost is a revolution, and there's a change in the way everything's going to be done. Look, a long time ago, Bill Gates realized that knowledge and answers and there's a different way to display information. You've got a Word document, you've got an Excel spreadsheet, you've got a PowerPoint slide. It's the same with knowledge. Knowledge is not an FAQ. Knowledge is a process, and how do you get to somewhere? Knowledge is a triage of what's the right one for you. Like if you work in a bank and somebody said, I'm thinking about getting a credit card, what ones have you got? Then you need to actually immediately have knowledge that tells you every single credit card. But then that's not the last question the customer's going to ask. They're going to ask, well, what's the right one for me? And so you need somebody to be able to help them talk through the right questions to triage what's the right one for them. A knowledge management system actually does that for you. You don't need to memorize that because it's managing the knowledge. It's giving you an answer to a complex question by just taking you through a few steps to get to an answer. And so, knowledge management learned a long time ago that it's not just about FAQs. But unfortunately, people that don't understand knowledge management, like CRMs that think that they should throw a knowledge management system in on it, they just still think it's FAQs and they don't understand the need for speed and simplicity.
I think that was a great summary of what a knowledge management system is and then how one should think about it. Just in the interest of time, before we wrap up, Brad, what are your top 3 pieces of advice, for leaders who are looking to transform their customer experience, right?
First of all, I will try and avoid being single-dimensional. Your first step always has to be talk to your customers. My product is owned by me, but my product manager and the person who decides what's going to be in it is not me, because I don't talk to customers every single day. So the people that are actually dealing with your customers are the ones that understand your customers. Please listen to them, ask them some questions, or get out and start talking to your customers yourself. But the only way you can be customer focused is to understand your customers. And I read a very, very large global consulting company did a paper for a big bank in Australia that only needed one word to change the whole focus. The paper was titled, How Do We Stop Your Customers From Calling You? All they needed to do was change stop to save. How do you save your customers from calling you? And the whole context of the paper would be totally different. And so if you're talking to the customers and understanding your customers, you're going to be better off. Naturally, I'm going to say, if you're going to answer your customers in the future in the way your customers want to be answered and in the channel that your customers want to ask the question, you need one knowledge management system to be able to deliver an answer through any single channel. One of the biggest mysteries to me is why organizations don't see their website as a self-serve portal. Every individual on the planet would prefer to go to a website to answer their question rather than call a contact center. Every CEO in the world would prefer a customer to serve themselves rather than call a contact center. And yet the silos that are kept within organizations mean the marketing department manages the website. They make up a bunch of FAQs. By the way, the marketing department regularly hasn't spoken to a customer in the last 10 years, but they know what the FAQs are. But those FAQs are not developed by the customer service area. And anyway, the customer service area has 2,500 knowledge articles and the FAQs have got 10. So that doesn't make sense. Connect your knowledge system to the website, allow your customers to answer their question through the channel they want to ask the question. And those channels are broadening. Just because large language models came out this year, who's to say it's not going to be something next year? I mean, the logic to me is that I would be saying to Alexa, hey, Alexa, can you answer this question? I wouldn't make a telephone call. I would go to Alexa to get the answer. And that's possibly the future if AWS and Amazon ever get it right. But at the moment, we've got Luna and an AI talk bot that can answer a lot of your questions. And why would you want to talk to a machine? I would say if I can get an answer from a machine within a minute rather than waiting for a agent for 45 minutes, I think I'm going to choose them.
Thanks, Brad. That was very insightful.
Pleasure.
Enjoyed our discussion. And then for our listeners, in case you want to learn more about LivePro or connect with Brad, check out the links in the comment section.